So, it takes a single photon of light, something like 200,000 years, to travel from the superheated core of our sun to its surface.
Right, which is just an unimaginably long time.
Yeah, exactly. 200 millennia just violently bouncing around, like it's trapped in this chaotic, crushing maze of plasma and
It's
gravity.
just a completely stagnant, high-pressure environment.
But the second that photon finally breaks free from the surface, it takes only 8 minutes to cross the vacuum of space and reach Earth.
Wow, from 200,000 years to just 8 minutes.
Yeah. And those 8 minutes of travel time ultimately fuel, well, everything.
Right.
Every plant, every ocean current, every animal, and every human being on this planet.
Pretty wild ratio when you think about it.
It really is. And today, for you listening, we are looking at a geographic location on Earth that operates on the exact same terrifying
Oh,
astrophysics.
totally. A place of just immense density and chaotic collisions.
Right. A place that traps people for years in this, this pressure cooker of delusion. And it's all in the hopes of producing that 8-minute burst of light that fundamentally alters human history.
It is such a stunning framing device for a city. I mean, we usually think of urban centers as these logical grids,
Yeah, designed for commerce or trade.
Exactly. Places built near deep-water ports or fertile valleys. But the author we're looking at today abandons terrestrial economics entirely.
They go straight to astrophysics.
Right. To explain a city that simply shouldn't exist on paper.
Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to unpack a truly brilliant, razor-sharp piece of satirical writing.
It's really something else.
We are dissecting a blog post. It's written as a stand-up style monologue dated Friday, April 24th, 2026.
And it's titled Netizen, the Founder Monologue, with satire, in parentheses.
Yeah. And while the essay itself is this hilarious teardown of the sacred delusion of San Francisco's startup culture,
Yeah.
what makes this deep dive so incredibly rich is the environment it lives in.
The marginalia of this blog post is just as vital as the text itself.
Exactly. We have the surrounding digital context of the blog, like sidebars, book promotions, tech headlines from early 2026.
And they give us these breadcrumb clues, right? About a world undergoing massive seismic technological shifts.
We're talking autonomous AI advancements, corporate mega mergers.
And a societal leap into what the author calls an age of abundance.
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because we are not just reading a joke today. We are looking at the anatomy of human ambition.
Which is such a massive topic.
It really is. For you listening, whether you're an aspiring founder sitting in a garage, or a massive tech skeptic, or just someone insanely curious about how the modern world actually gets built, we are going to ask you to consider the psychology of innovation.
What are you building? And more importantly, what level of pure delusion is required to actually build it?
Which brings us right back to the sun. The author's opening metaphor establishes the gravitational rules of this universe.
Yeah, the author writes that those 200,000 years the photon spends trapped inside the sun is basically the universe saying, bro, chill.
Bro, chill. I love that line.
It's so good. It's an agonizingly long period of incubation. But the eventual payoff is the creation of everything on Earth.
From the Amazon rainforest to, as the author brilliantly quips, LinkedIn influencers.
The ultimate evolutionary pinnacle, obviously.
Oh, obviously. But what's fascinating here is the specific mechanical choice of gravity as the defining characteristic of San Francisco.
Right. The author isn't just saying San Francisco is crowded or busy.
No, the thesis is that San Francisco has mass.
Yes. It has such immense gravitational pull that it warps reality. It bends global talent toward it, and it distorts time.
The author actually notes that it took them decades to get to San Francisco.
Not because they took a wrong turn on the highway.
Right. But because escaping the gravity of a normal, conventional life to reach this dense core of innovation requires an agonizing amount of energy.
It takes decades to escape your own inertia.
So let me throw out a pressure cooker analogy here, because I want to figure out if the author views this as a tragedy or a necessity.
Okay, lay it on me.
If the core of the sun is this high-pressure, stagnant state where light is trapped, is the author implying that true innovation absolutely requires that brutal incubation?
Like you have to suffer first.
Exactly. Like you have to be trapped, struggling, and fighting the immense gravity of the status quo for years. You get rejected, you pivot, you fail, and then boom.
You finally hit the surface of the sun.
Right, you hit the streets of San Francisco and you get that 8-minute burst of world-changing genius. Or, and this is my question, is the author secretly arguing that those 200,000 years are just a horrific waste of human capital?
That tension is literally the engine of the entire piece. I mean, I read it as a begrudging admission of necessity.
Really? You think they think it's necessary?
Yeah, you simply do not get the 8-minute burst of planetary creation without the 200,000 years of dense, chaotic collisions.
Because it creates the heat.
Exactly. In physics, that 200,000-year journey is called a random walk.
A random walk.
Yeah. The photon is constantly crashing into atoms, being absorbed and re-emitted in random directions. And honestly, that is the perfect mechanical description of a startup.
Just bouncing off venture capitalists and bad product market fits until you accidentally find the exit.
Precisely.
Yeah.
San Francisco, in this model, is the surface of the sun. It is the launch pad.
But the mass of the city, the sheer density of people bouncing off one another, is what generates the heat required for fusion.
Right. Without the crushing density, you just have a cold rock.
But when we zoom down from the cosmic scale of the sun to the actual geographic reality of this city, the author paints a picture of a place that feels less like a launch pad and honestly more like a cult compound.
Oh, 100%.
The narrative makes a massive claim right up front. It says San Francisco is not a city, it is a pilgrimage.
A religious destination masquerading as a municipality.
Yes, they describe it as Mecca or Vatican City. But this is a Vatican where the Pope isn't some octogenarian theologian in robes.
No, the Pope of San Francisco is a 24-year-old college dropout named Chad.
Wearing a fleece vest, who just successfully raised $80 million for an app that lets you rent other people's spoons.
Which perfectly captures the collision of high reverence and absolute absurdity.
It really does. And the physical contradictions of this holy land are laid out so starkly. I mean, the author lists out all the reasons San Francisco makes zero logical sense as the center of the technological universe.
Right, because it's not the political capital.
No, Washington, D.C. has all the regulatory power.
And it's not the financial capital either. New York holds the purse strings.
Plus, it is wildly unaffordable, and fundamentally, the author argues it is barely functional as a civic entity.
The sensory details here are just brutal.
They really are. We get this incredibly vivid description. It's a place where you can comfortably purchase a $14 artisanal adaptogenic smoothie.
But to get into the cafe, you have to step over a human being injecting heroin into their arm.
It's so dystopian. The author writes that the streets smell like ambition, urine, and artisanal coffee.
Grounding the high-minded tech philosophy in that gritty, broken urban reality is a classic satirical technique.
It really forces you to pay attention.
Yeah, it forces the reader to confront the paradox. I mean, why would the brightest engineering minds on the planet choose to physically locate themselves in a city like that?
People capable of building artificial intelligence and reusable rockets.
Exactly. Why go to a city that cannot seemingly manage basic sanitation or public health?
And the author's answer is that they don't move there for the civic amenities. They treat it the way medieval peasants talked about Jerusalem.
Yes. They go because they fundamentally believe that if they do not make the geographic pilgrimage, their soul cannot, as the author puts it, exit stealth mode.
Exit stealth mode. God, that's funny. But we're seeing San Francisco defined entirely as a belief system here.
It is a collective hallucination. People flock to a city that is objectively difficult to navigate, burdened with extreme wealth inequality, and notoriously expensive.
Because it functions on mythology.
Exactly. And for you listening, think about your own industry or passions. We see this dynamic everywhere.
Oh, for sure. Is there a geographic mecca you are supposed to migrate to?
A place that runs far more on vibes, historical prestige, and the illusion of proximity than on actual practical utility.
Like LA for entertainment, or Milan for fashion,
Yeah.
or Nashville for country music.
Right. If you're an actor waiting tables in Ohio, society views you as unemployed.
Yeah, it's just a job.
But if you move to Los Angeles and wait the exact same tables, society views you as pre-fame.
Wow. The geography literally alters your identity before you've even accomplished anything.
It's geographic alchemy. You're anointed simply by standing inside the city limits.
But okay, if the city is this dysfunctional and everyone living there quietly knows it's dysfunctional, what is the justification for staying?
In the text, everyone rationalizes their presence with 2 words.
The ecosystem.
Yes. And the author just violently roasts this concept.
They really do. They write that claiming you live in SF for the ecosystem is like asking why Paris is romantic and someone answering, because croissants.
It is a thought-terminating cliche.
A buzzword used to mask an irrational economic choice.
Completely. And the author points out the biological absurdity of the term. I mean, there are no trees. There's a distinct lack of oxygen.
The dominant species in this supposed ecosystem is a guy wearing all bird sneakers, holding a $9 matcha latte.
Aggressively explaining the concept of network effects to a barista who just wants him to move down the counter.
It's so painfully accurate.
It's a monoculture. An ecosystem implies biodiversity, a balance of different species relying on one another.
But San Francisco, as described here, is an endless plain of the exact same organism trying to consume the exact same resource. Which brings us to the actual resource they are consuming, and here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, the author stops talking about vibes and starts following the money.
We hear the phrase Silicon Valley VC money. So often it feels native to the soil. But the author explicitly corrects the record.
San Francisco does not make the money.
New York makes the money.
The underlying macroeconomic structure of the tech industry, brilliantly distilled into a dysfunctional family dynamic.
So it's essentially a massive parental subsidy. New York is the stern father operating in reality, actually generating GDP, dealing with margins and interest rates.
And San Francisco is the irresponsible son who moved out west, started microdosing on Tuesdays, and refuses to wear shoes.
Because shoes are an oppressive legacy system, that line alone is just devastating.
It's so good.
And this son takes the father's hard-earned capital and spends it on a startup called Moon Llama.
Moon Llama, an underwater crypto drone company.
It sounds completely unhinged, but if you look at the zero interest rate environment of 2021, that was probably a real pitch deck.
Oh, I guarantee someone pitched that.
But this father-son, East Coast-West Coast dynamic leads to what might be the thesis statement of the entire monologue. The author states, San Francisco is not rich. San Francisco is funded.
That is a critical, profound distinction. It changes the entire paradigm of how we evaluate the city's output.
The author compares the entire city to a college student with a platinum credit card. The student appears incredibly successful, staying in nice hotels, buying expensive dinners.
But they aren't actually generating wealth. They're just heavily subsidized by someone else's labor.
I have to ask, though, about the mechanics of this. How does an entire civic culture survive? How does it maintain its arrogance when it is built on subsidized capital rather than immediate profitability?
It's a great question.
Like, does being funded instead of rich actually provide the necessary insulation to invent the future? If you took away the platinum card, would the innovation stop?
To understand that, we have to look at the mechanics of venture capital. When you are a traditional rich business, say, a manufacturing plant in Ohio or a restaurant in Chicago, you are bound by the brutal physics of immediate supply and demand.
Right. You must sell your product today for more than it costs to produce, or you die.
Exactly. You are tethered to the ground.
Mm.
But venture capital does not operate on immediate profitability.
It's a totally different game.
VC funds usually run on 10-year life cycles. They operate on the power law, which assumes that 99% of the companies they invest in will go to absolute zero.
So they walk into the casino expecting to lose almost every hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they are hunting for the 1% that will return the entire fund 100 times over.
Wow.
So when a founder is funded, they are entirely decoupled from immediate economic reality. They're given a multi-year runway where profitability is actually discouraged if it gets in the way of hypergrowth.
So being funded provides the psychological safety to build an underwater crypto drone company.
Yes. Now, 99 times out of 100, Moon Llama fails and the money vaporizes.
But that one time...
It's Airbnb, it's Uber, it's OpenAI.
Because if you force those platform companies to be instantly profitable from day one, they would have been crushed by incumbents.
Exactly. The culture survives precisely because it is subsidized. The entire city is essentially a massive, incredibly expensive laboratory where New York's capital is burned as fuel just to see if the smoke forms a unicorn.
And the people striking the matches, the ones happily burning that East Coast capital, are the so-called talent.
Yeah, the essay moves from the money to the people.
And again, the author notes how the laws of physics warp inside the zip code. They bring up this hypothetical engineer in Ohio.
Right, the IT guy.
In Ohio, this guy is a programmer. He fixes software bugs for an insurance company. He's a normal guy. But if you take that exact same human being with the exact same brain and the exact same laptop...
And you just put him on a plane?
Yeah, and change his rent to $4,000 a month in San Francisco... Suddenly, the ecosystem dubs him an AI researcher.
He goes from an IT employee to a visionary.
In Ohio, he fixes software bugs. In San Francisco, he's fixing humanity.
The talent didn't change. The storytelling surrounding the talent changed.
It goes back to that geographic alchemy. The city provides a narrative framework that elevates mundane technical work into a pseudo-religious calling.
And the most fascinating mechanism of this ecosystem's alchemy is how it processes failure.
Oh, this part is brilliant. In the real world, failure is a dead end. But the author talks about the generational layering of San Francisco.
Right. People in the Bay Area talk about the startup scene the way a sommelier talks about a vintage Bordeaux.
They'll say, oh, this particular co-working space has notes of early PayPal, a hint of Google, and a strong aftertaste of failed startups that pivoted into enterprise consulting.
The author calls it a sacred compost pile.
A sacred compost pile. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the treatment of failure is arguably Silicon Valley's most successful and most necessary cultural export.
Definitely. In almost any other global corporate hub, Tokyo, London, or Wall Street, losing $12 million of investor capital is a permanent stain on your professional soul.
You are ostracized. Your career as an executive is largely over.
You definitely aren't invited to speak on panels about how much you learned.
No, absolutely not. But in San Francisco, as the author observes, failure is repackaged as experience.
And experience translates directly into credibility.
Yeah. And credibility is the exact currency required to raise your next seed round.
So the failure is genuinely viewed by the ecosystem as the necessary fertilizer required to grow the next massive company.
But I have to challenge the nobility of this, though, because the author gets incredibly cynical right here.
Very cynical.
The author argues that losing $12 million isn't actually a profound learning experience. It's just getting financially traumatized on someone else's dime.
And they point out that most of these failed founders don't actually pivot into building the next unicorn.
Right. Most of them pivot into starting podcasts.
The great migration to thought leadership.
The author jokes that every failed founder immediately becomes a thought leader on social media, posting endless threads that start with, "Today I want to talk about why I had to shut down my company."
And the author translates that for us.
Yeah. What the founder is actually saying is, I want to talk about why I shut down my company and still deserve your attention.
It feels like a desperate grasp for status.
So is this dynamic purely cynical? Like, is it just a grift where people spin their traumatic failures into a personal brand? Or does the system actually need this culture of failure to function?
It requires an incredible amount of cognitive dissonance, but the system absolutely needs it.
Really? Even the podcast grifting?
Yes. The pivot to thought leader or podcaster is largely a psychological defense mechanism. When your identity is entirely wrapped up in being a founder and your company dies, you experience a catastrophic loss of status.
That makes sense.
The podcast, the Twitter threads, the consulting that is just a desperate attempt to maintain relevance in a hyper-competitive social hierarchy.
Please don't revoke my VIP pass to the ecosystem.
Exactly. However, the macro system of venture capital requires a high tolerance for failure to survive.
Because if the social penalty for bankrupting a startup was too severe, rational engineers would stop taking the massive, irrational risks required to invent entirely new paradigms.
Right. They would just take safe jobs at Google. The ecosystem needs people to be utterly unafraid of blowing up $12 million.
So the culture has socially engineered a safety net.
Yes. This mythology of the noble failure, they have socialized the prestige of risk-taking, ensuring that the pipeline of founders willing to throw themselves into the volcano never dries up.
They socialize the prestige while New York absorbs the financial loss. It's a brilliant setup if you can get it.
It really is.
But the way these people interact with each other inside this pressure cooker is, frankly, chilling. The author observes how people in SF socialize, and it fundamentally breaks the definition of human connection.
When they introduce themselves, they don't even use their last names.
They use their financial metrics.
They announce their valuation before their personality.
Hi, I'm Jason, seed stage. The author points out that this isn't a human being. Jason is a financial instrument walking around in a Patagonia vest.
You go to a party. Everyone is networking frantically, but nobody actually has friends.
And the author explains why friendship is not scalable, but networking is. They define networking as friendship with KPIs, key performance indicators.
It is the absolute commodification of human interaction. When your entire worldview is dictated by software metrics growth, scale, daily active users, return on investment system, You inevitably apply those same metrics to your personal life.
Which is terrifying.
A friend who doesn't offer a tangible return,
Yeah.
maybe an introduction to a partner at Andreessen Horowitz or early access to a new AI framework, is essentially categorized as a poorly performing asset.
You churn them out of your life the way you cancel a software subscription.
It's deeply sociopathic when you lay it out like that.
It really is. But it sets up an incredible pivot in the essay. The author tries to figure out if this hyper-capitalist delusion is just a byproduct of having a lot of money near a body of water.
Right, the geography question again.
So, they compare the San Francisco Bay to another famous bay in America, the Chesapeake Bay, Washington, D.C.
This is a masterclass in comparative sociological analysis.
It's a fascinating contrast. Now, I want to be super clear for you listening. We are entirely neutral here. We are just impartially reporting the author's satirical, politically charged views. We're not endorsing them, just unpacking the author's theory on ambition.
Exactly, because both regions are fundamentally company towns fueled by massive influxes of external capital. But the mechanism of that capital changes the psychology of the residents.
The author looks at the D.C. metro area and calls it a swamp. A swamp heavily populated with senators, defense lobbyists, and people who categorize systemic corruption as public service.
The author points out that the zip codes surrounding D.C. boast the highest per capita incomes in the entire country.
The Chesapeake Bay has unlimited money, immense global power, and incredible density of talent. But the author claims that in D.C., the startup isn't a software company. The startup is a government contract.
And the exit strategy isn't an IPO. It's a revolving door into a defense consulting firm.
And the product. The author bluntly states that the product is war.
They're contrasting the San Francisco delusion of building a utopia with what they view as D.C.'s institutional protection racket.
The author ruthlessly mocks D.C.'s definition of public service, describing a scenario where someone makes $900,000 a year helping a weapons manufacturer navigate regulatory complexity.
The author says that isn't service, that's hostage negotiation.
So the burning question the author poses is, if D.C. has all the money, all the power, and all the smart people, why isn't the Chesapeake Bay inventing the future? Why isn't it the Silicon Valley of the East?
Because the underlying incentive structures shape the type of ambition that thrives there.
How so?
In D.C., success is defined by successfully navigating and manipulating existing legacy structures. You don't blow up the system, you find a highly profitable loophole within it. The author astutely observes that people move to D.C. to build a portfolio. That is institutional ambition. It is inherently conservative. You are protecting your downside.
And in San Francisco, you're not protecting anything. You're lighting the boats on fire.
Precisely. The author writes that people move to San Francisco to build the future, or as they cynically amend, to cosplay building the future.
That is mythological ambition. Institutional ambition is about securing a slice of a pie that already exists. Mythological ambition is about hallucinating an entirely new pie into existence through sheer technological willpower.
Institutional ambition versus mythological ambition. I love that framework.
But honestly, it brings us right to the core paradox of the entire text. If mythological ambition is just about ideas, knowledge, and code, why do you need to be physically standing on the corner of Market Street to do it?
The tension between the ubiquity of information and the necessity of physical proximity.
The author points out that we live in a post-geographic information age. Knowledge is completely decentralized and free. You can open up your laptop in a village in Nepal, a cafe in Nigeria, or a farm in Nebraska.
And you can watch a live stream of Mark Andreessen declaring that software is eating the world.
Although the author provides a very 2026 update to that famous quote.
Oh, right. The author notes that software ate the world a decade ago. Now, software is eating itself, software is on Ozempic, and software requires a monthly subscription.
Which is hilarious. But the fundamental point holds. The raw materials for innovation code, tutorials, computing power are globally distributed. So why the density?
Why are people paying $4,000 a month to share a bathroom in the Mission District?
Exactly. This raises an important question. If the information is everywhere and talent is a globally distributed commodity, what is the actual tangible utility of physical density?
What happens in the coffee shops that doesn't happen on a Zoom call?
The author explores this by highlighting the absolute absurdity of the conversations you overhear when you actually sit in one of those coffee shops. You walk in and you hear two guys in Patagonia vests intensely discussing how they are using LLM agents to disrupt dentistry.
Disrupt dentistry.
The author jokes that no human activity is safe from these people. Not dating, not eating, not even laundry. People in SF don't just wash their clothes, they launch an app to reinvent the paradigm of garment sanitation.
It reveals how the medium has completely overtaken the message. To the San Francisco mindset, if a solution cannot be packaged as a scalable software application, it is not a valid solution.
The author literally says, you could discover the cure for cancer, but if you don't have a sleek landing page with an email capture form, no one on Sand Hill Road will invest.
It is madness.
And out of this primordial soup of apps, podcasts, and iced matcha emerges what the author identifies as a new species of human being, the Silicon Valley philosopher.
This is where the satire cuts the deepest.
The author describes a guy who sells enterprise cloud storage software, just digital filing cabinets for corporations.
Right.
But this guy goes on a 3-hour long-form podcast, stares intensely into the microphone and says, the real question isn't how to build a B2B SaaS company. The real question is how to build meaning.
And the author is just screaming through the screen, bro, you sell cloud storage, relax.
It is the desperate application of grandiose world historical language to the absolute mundanity of consumer software.
They speak with the gravitas of someone constructing the next Roman Empire, but the actual economic engine underneath all that philosophy is just optimizing mobile ad targeting and figuring out how to deliver pad thai 5 minutes faster.
It's the ultimate delusion. But it brings us to the math of the density. The author breaks down the population of a single square mile in this city.
Oh, the stats here are amazing.
Inside this 1 square mile, you have 40 founders, 80 engineers, 12 venture capitalists, 200 startup advisors who don't actually do anything, 300 community builders, and one guy sitting in the corner who's been working in stealth mode since 2016. He's building a calendar app, but he treats it with the secrecy of the Manhattan Project.
Waiting for the exact right moment to change the world.
But right after mocking the calendar guy, the cloud storage philosophers, and the $14 smoothies, we hit the turn, the climax of the essay.
The author stops laughing and admits something that clearly infuriates them.
The undeniable empirical reality of the city.
It works.
Yes. Despite the ridiculousness, despite the broken transit, the rampant ego, and the spectacular failure, San Francisco actually produces companies. Huge, world-altering companies are forged in this exact fire.
So we have to ask, what is the mechanism? How does a city full of delusional podcasters and spoon rental CEOs actually manufacture the future?
The author locates the driving engine of the city, and it is entirely psychological. They identify the true narcotic of the ecosystem.
It's a drug.
But it isn't cocaine, it isn't microdosing psilocybin, and it isn't artisanal kombucha. The drug is a single terrifying question that every person in the city asks you the moment you shake their hand.
What are you building?
Let's break down the psychological weight of that specific phrase. If you are sitting in a coffee shop in almost any other city in the world on a Tuesday at 2 p.m., staring blankly at a laptop screen, the societal assumption is that you are unemployed.
Right. Someone might look at you and think, get a job.
But in San Francisco, the cultural default is inverted. They look at you unkempt on a Tuesday and ask, what are you building?
It grants you instant unearned status. It assumes you aren't unemployed. It assumes you are a creator in the incubation phase.
Exactly. It operates on the generous presumption of hidden genius. And the author notes a terrifying psychological phenomenon.
When you hear that question enough times, when hundreds of people look at you and expect you to be building the future, your personal reality begins to warp.
You internalize the expectation.
You start believing that you actually are supposed to build something massive. You start believing that the future of humanity is your personal responsibility. You genuinely believe you can become that photon of light escaping the sun.
The conclusion the author reaches is just profound. They write, San Francisco isn't where startups happen. San Francisco is where founders happen. It is the factory that manufactures human delusion at scale.
Delusion not as a character flaw, but as a heavily manufactured, vital industrial commodity.
The author brings up this analogy to Bollywood, and it is so incredibly apt. San Francisco is the Bollywood of technology.
It is where the cameras are rolling, where the producers hold the money, and where the drama is dialed up to 11.
The author says everyone there is beautiful, exhausted, and delusional. Half the people in Bollywood are trying to make actual cinematic art, and the other half are just trying to get invited to the right after party.
And this is the genius part, you absolutely need the partygoers. The posers create the gravity that attracts the real artists.
That is a brilliant synthesis of the ecosystem. The community builders, the podcast grifters, the thought leaders, and the failed founders, they are the mass of the sun.
They are the 200,000 years of crushing gravity.
They will never emit light themselves, but their collective weight, their endless networking, creates the intense social and financial pressure required to forge the actual visionary.
You cannot produce the one genius who escapes the surface in 8 minutes without the thousands of delusional cosplayers surrounding them, constantly applying that pressure, constantly asking, what are you building?
So we have this incredible satirical teardown of the psychological factory of San Francisco. But to fully grasp the weight of this document, we have to pull back and look at the world surrounding it.
Right, the 2026 context.
We need to transition to the sidebars of this blog from April 24th, 2026, because the reality surrounding this essay paints a specific, somewhat terrifying but awe-inspiring picture of the future.
This is where the satire crashes headfirst into tangible macroeconomic reality.
Let me read you some of the things living on the exact same webpage as this satirical monologue. We have a list of other books written by the author. The titles include Lumina AI, The Trillion-Dollar Sun,
Okay.
Presagenetics, the technology that lets us watch life think, Agentic AI set to explode in 2026, the convergence age, and liquid computing, the future of human-tech symbiosis.
The author is chronicling an era of massive, unprecedented technological convergence. This isn't just software eating the world. This is software rewriting the biological and physical world.
And look at the tech headlines linked on the blog. These are dispatch reports from early 2026. DeepSeek V4, a million token context that agents can actually use.
That's huge.
OpenAI's GPT 5.5 powers codex on NVIDIA. SpaceX and Cursor strike partnership that might end in a $60 billion acquisition.
Wow.
And my absolute favorite, a VentureBeat headline. 85% of enterprises are running AI agents. Only 5% trust them enough to ship.
Let's actually break down the mechanics of what those headlines mean, because it fundamentally changes the context of the essay. A million token context in an AI model isn't just a marginal upgrade.
What does it actually mean in practice?
Well, a token is roughly a piece of a word. Early AI models could only remember a few pages of text in a single conversation. A million tokens means you can feed the AI an entire corporate code base, decades of financial histories, and complex business plans all at once, and it comprehends all of it simultaneously.
So it's not just a chatbot answering trivia anymore. It has infinite short-term memory.
Exactly. And when you combine that memory with agentic AI, which the headlines mention are now running in 85% of enterprises, you cross a massive threshold.
Right, because agents act on their own.
Agentic AI means the software doesn't just wait for a human to type a prompt. It is given a high-level goal, and it autonomously breaks that goal down into steps, writes its own code, interacts with other software, and executes the plan. It is an autonomous digital worker.
And that SpaceX and Cursor headline. Cursor is an AI coding platform. A $60 billion merger with a space exploration company implies that AI is literally writing the software to navigate the stars.
If we synthesize this background context, it completely reframes the joke of the monologue. The satire mocks the delusion, the $9 matcha, the VC money burning on underwater crypto drones.
But the sidebars prove that the factory actually worked. By 2026, the ecosystem has literally produced the age of abundance that the author cynically prophesied in the subtitle of the essay.
The essay's subheader reads, "The impending age of abundance was prophesied in the scriptures thousands of years ago." It functions as a joke about tech bros viewing themselves as religious figures.
But when you look at the reality of $2026 billion space and AI coding partnerships, autonomous agents running the global enterprise infrastructure, you realize the tech profits weren't entirely wrong. The delusion yielded tangible miracles.
And look at the parallel imagery. The author's book on the sidebar is titled Lumina AI, A Trillion-Dollar Sun.
It perfectly mirrors the opening metaphor of the monologue. The physical sun takes 200,000 years to let light escape. In 2026, artificial intelligence has become the new sun.
It is the trillion-dollar gravity well that is bending global talent, capital, and time.
That is wild. The author is deeply embedded in the exact physics they are mocking. And honestly, that brings us to the greatest irony of this entire deep dive.
The author themselves.
Yes. We have to look critically at the author. They spend thousands of words brutally dismantling the Silicon Valley philosopher, the podcast grifter, and the guy turning human connection into a framework. But look at the author's other book titles listed on the site.
Marketing Escape Velocity, How any tech startup can reach unicorn status.
30 ways to close sales. The 8-step sales playbook.
The author is actively participating in the exact ecosystem they are satirizing. They're literally selling the playbooks for the very delusion they are mocking.
They are swimming in the compost pile. They are the sommelier of the generational layering. It's incredible. It seems you cannot critique the machine with this level of accuracy without being an active cog inside of it.
It speaks to the inescapable gravity of the city. Even when you are smart enough to see through the illusion, even when you recognize the utter absurdity of the $14 smoothie and the disrupting dentistry pitches, you still stay.
You still write the sales playbooks.
Because, as the cosmic metaphor suggests, the gravity is your destiny. You cannot escape the pull of the sun.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this all together. We have taken an incredible journey through the anatomy of ambition today.
We really have.
We started with the cosmic gravity of the sun, equating the crushing density of a photon's random walk to the agonizing, chaotic incubation of a startup.
We explored the religious pilgrimages of young founders treating San Francisco like Mecca, answering to a 24-year-old Pope Chad.
We broke down the vital economic difference between New York being rich and San Francisco merely being funded. The college kids surviving on a platinum card so they can invent the future.
We examined the sociological contrast between Washington, D.C.'s institutional ambition, navigating the regulatory swamp to build a safe portfolio, and San Francisco's mythological ambition of burning capital to hallucinate a new reality.
And we arrived at the ultimate, uncomfortable truth of the text. The physical density of insane, delusional people isn't a bug in the system. It is the required fuel.
You absolutely need the mass of the podcasters, the grifters, and the posers to create the social gravity that launches the actual visionaries.
It is a factory that manufactures human delusion at scale.
Which leaves us with a fascinating and, frankly, disruptive thought to walk away with, especially when we factor in the 2026 AI context surrounding this essay.
Lay it on us.
The entire premise of San Francisco's magic, according to the author, is that it functions as a physical factory. You need human beings crammed into a single square mile, stepping over needles to buy matcha, asking each other, "What are you building?" to manufacture the necessary delusion.
Right, the physical proximity is the whole point.
But we just read the headlines. 85% of enterprises are running autonomous AI agents. We have entered an era where systems don't just generate text, they execute multi-step plans. They write the code, they deploy the servers, they optimize the ad spend.
The agents are doing the building.
So what happens to the geographic gravity of San Francisco when autonomous AI agents start acting as the founders themselves?
Oh, wow.
If an AI can execute a startup's business plan from a server farm in Ohio, the factory of delusion is no longer a coffee shop in the Mission District. The delusion is computational.
Does an AI need to pay $4,000 a month in rent?
Does an AI need to be asked, "What are you building?" by a guy in a fleece vest to feel motivated?
Probably not.
Does an AI agent need a belief system and a pilgrimage to invent the future? If the founders of tomorrow are just infinite context windows distributed across global data centers, does the Holy Land of San Francisco finally lose its mass? Does the 200,000-year physical incubation period simply evaporate into the cloud?
That completely shatters the map all over again. The geography of ambition might not just be shifting to a new city, the gravity itself might be migrating out of the physical world entirely.
It's a completely new paradigm.
Well, that is a massive thought to leave you with. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. The next time you are sitting in a cafe or logging onto a video call or just staring at a blinking cursor on a blank document, think about the invisible gravity pulling on you and ask yourself carefully, what are you building?